Hi guys, and welcome to another Phil and Jen in the Philippines. Phil here in Australia and Jen in the Philippines. Before we start, subscribe, comment, thumbs up, tell your friends, see if you can share the channel so we can grow it. Okay, today I'm going to touch on a subject which a lot of you guys that actually live in the Philippines on a permanent or semi-permanent basis already know. But for a lot of guys that are undertaking relationships for the first time with a Filipina, these are little things that they must be aware of that can lead to trouble if you don't have an understanding about it. The propensity, as we perceive it, for Filipinas or Filipinos to lie. Okay, you've got to understand the background and how these people have been brought up and the restrictions they have on telling the entire truth. And it happens at a very, very early age, and they're conditioned to answer or respond in this particular manner because that's what they're conditioned to do. The first thing is everyone over there that's married to a Filipina will know, and I suppose a lot of Western guys know, their wives are never wrong. Okay, now, more so in the Philippines. Now, you might all have a chuckle about that, but on the same token too, I am yet to find where, even with my buddies' relationships, they say the same thing. They're not introspective and they don't look at the situation, and they will not take responsibility for anything that is done. And it's always somebody else's fault. And because you're married to them, it doesn't matter how obscure that fault may be, it sometimes more than likely lies with you. This can be very, very annoying and distracting until you understand the situation. Remember we spoke about passive aggressiveness? Well, that's an underlying feature, but it goes back to their childhood and their condition to act this way. The most powerful thing in the Philippines is gossip. That's the first thing to understand. So you don't like people talking about you, especially in the negative. When they talk about you in the positive, it's great, but you know, the worst possible thing you can do in the Philippines is have someone talk about you in the negative. So taking that into account. The other thing is to responsibility that we know it is usually gauged over there that if you are in a situation, whether it be work, whether it be interactions and whatever, if something goes wrong and you are responsible for it, let's take a child going through adolescence into adulthood. 9 times out of 10, you must pay for that indiscretion or that accident, whatever it happens to be. Even today, most fellows that are engaged in employment, if something goes wrong with a piece of equipment, such as they're driving a bus or something like that, whether it be their fault or not, and they're involved in an accident of any description, they are held responsible for that piece of machinery, that bus, that car, those goods, that the stock in the restaurant. And if anything goes wrong or anything goes missing, it comes out of their pockets. So to protect themselves against that, it's denial, or deflection. Let's take the example of the bus. They're driving a bus and the bus is damaged. 1, they may not even know about it. 2, even if they do know about it, whether it be their faults or somebody else's, it's always somebody else's fault. You didn't know, or the guy that had the bus before you did it. There's a deflection because they're paid peanuts. And for an employer to turn around and say, look, you owe us for this panel beating work, or you owe us for this food that wasn't paid for, or you owe us for the discrepancy in the till, it all comes out of their pockets. So they deflect and deflect and deflect. Now, when you're surrounded by this 24 hours a day, this deflection, this refusal to take responsibility, it drifts out even into personal life. The only thing that they're 100% sure of and they feel confident with, whether the information that they have is right or wrong, that other people agree with them. So your wife or girlfriend may come to you with information which you know to be incorrect or false. And she will swear black and blue because other people have told her, and the consensus of opinion amongst her own people is this is right. She will go to the grave swearing that that information is correct. You automatically, like most husbands, get so far down in the pecking order, your opinion doesn't count. You don't know what you're talking about, but that's not just the Philippines. That comes 90% of the time all over the world with all wives. They seem to take more notice of everybody else rather than you. And if you've got a wife that doesn't do that and relies totally on what you say, you're a lucky man. But the majority of we guys that have been married before know that everything's our fault. It is just exaggerated in the Philippines. So it's very difficult to work your way around when trying to get information. And it could be, and what gets to Westerners is a lot of the things they deny as a reflex action are so petty, you don't really understand why they don't put their hand up. So, oh yeah, I did that. I broke those eggs or whatever. They will not do that. And that's how ingrained it is. You may have a lady like mine who turns around and doesn't care and says, yeah, I broke those eggs, or I did that, or I did that. But somehow in the conversation, it'll be my fault if she's broken a cup. The screws that held the cup or the hooks that held the cup, the only reason it broke is because you did the screws originally and the screw fell out. Things like that. So again, it's a deflection situation. It can be annoying, but you get used to it. So you just nod your head. They don't hold a grudge against that type of situation as long as they can deflect blame somewhere. But it does take a lot of getting used to. So having said that, that's one of the things that are annoying. The other thing that I found annoying, and from the family that I inherited through my wife, through social relationships and whatever, even though they all speak English, and I imagine this to be in any European language, when we want to emphasize a point, we become, well, in English, I imagine it's the same as I said in other languages, we emphasize it by, okay, it can appear that we're raising our voice just to emphasize that particular point. The nuances in our voices go up so people take notice that this is important and whatever. So as I said, they all, or the majority of them, speak pretty good English. But as soon as you raise that level, that tone, you become excited about something, they immediately assume, and the majority of time, that your change in your cadence of speech is you're becoming annoyed, you're becoming angry. So the nuances there are difficult. So you'll be forever, for a period of time until she gets used to it, and sometimes they never get used to it. Always imagine you're the angry man. Now, and of course, anything goes wrong, the angry man will go off, etc., etc. That can put a great strain on a relationship when she always thinks you're pent up and angry, and all you're doing is exactly what you do at home, because at home, whether it be England or Australia or America or Canada or France and whatever, to emphasize a point, you change your tonality. You know, there is, or appears to be, and I'm not an expert on Filipino culture, but on observation, even though there are very noisy people, I've listened to them speak in Visayan and Ilocano and Tagalog and whatever, and to my ear, it appears like they're always fighting because they're this high-pitched, loud, boisterous thing, which we don't usually get into unless you're naturally loud anyway. But they're just having a normal conversation, and it's punctuated by a laugh here and a laugh there. Then you realize they're not fighting. So they're noisy. And then to reflect on us, when we change our cadence and tone, they immediately assume that you're angry and you're the angry man. So this is something to take into consideration. And if you do get angry, they will say point blank to you, why are you getting angry at me? And you say, I'm not getting angry, I'm just talking. This is the way I talk. Some of them get used to the fact after years, I'm not talking about months, after years, that this is the way you react to certain situations, but in the back of their head, they still can't work out whether you're actually angry or trying to emphasize a point. Again, this can be very frustrating. Now, there's going to be some of you guys out there say, well, that's not right. You know, my wife does this or my girlfriend does that. I'm sure it varies from place to place in the Philippines. In the south, they're a lot gruffer. Say, for instance, in Visayas, there are more gentle people, and that type of raising of the voice to emphasize a point is still considered to be, oh, he's getting angry, or he's getting mad at me, or he's getting emotional, or whatever. It's always taken as the negative. I don't know, because I haven't spent enough time in the north on a day-to-day basis, whether or not that is the same in the north. But in the south, they find it very difficult to understand how we intimate certain things, and sarcasm. My goodness, most of you will know that sarcasm and our sense of humour is just lost on the Filipinos. Sarcasm, unless they've had exposure to the West through working and whatever, they don't really understand sarcasm. And if you use a sarcastic tone or whatever, it's taken as negative. So watch that. Our humour, like I'm forever trying to tell relatively basic jokes to my wife and her family, and they'll politely smile and whatever. They have no idea of why it's funny. And yet, on television, as most of you will see over there on the local TV stations, it's very slapsticky. They laugh at people hurting themselves, pratfalls, the most basic of comedy. And that I've found, which is a general rule of thumb throughout the world with, let's say, primitive peoples. I'm not suggesting they are primitive, but basic peoples, especially in a village type arrangement. In Africa, they laugh at the same thing. In Southeast Asia, they laugh at these type of things. It's just a difference in a sense of humour. So if you guys have a humour bone, and you're going over there to sweet talk them, be very careful, because you can crack a joke or a sarcastic wink wink nudge nudge, and you can upset them because they don't fully understand your sense of humour, especially if you're starting off with a relationship before they actually get to know you. Well, there's some interesting things that I thought I'd pass on to you. I'm sure a lot of guys will comment in regard to their own relationships that are living over there. There's some of the things I found, and I'm still trying to get over certain things. I've got to check myself. When my wife, Jennifer, reacts to me, I've got to continually tell her from time to time that, settle down, I'm not getting angry, I'm just emphasising a point, but really, she still doesn't get it. Anyway, Phil and Jen in the Philippines, knock the subscribe, hit the bell, thumbs up, and comment, guys. I love reading the comments. Cheers for now.